No, we're never going to understand you because I was speaking my own language. Those words were very difficult for them because it's a very phonetical language. And they were very ashamed of being ridiculous. So we started with some workshops for adults. At the beginning, I felt very motivated. We had 30 students. Next week, we had 15 students. Then, next week, we had 10 people, then 5 people. And I said, no, this is never going to work. Things are just getting worse, and people just stop going. And I said, but why don't you like it? And they said, no, because we've always been discriminated. Even because I have long hair, I've been discriminated. Or if I wear a blouse like yours, I will be discriminated. And I don't want to feel that. I want society to accept me. And I said, they asked me, are you ashamed? And I said, why? That's how I was raised. That's why I learned. If someone says you're an Indian, you should say thank you for recalling what I am because I had forgotten it. So that's what my dad told me, that indigenous people are beautiful. You are different to all of those people. You are different. You are unique. Nobody has the blood that you have. Only these 7,000 people have this blood, and we know what we know. Since my childhood, I was taught ceremony and the rights and respect to nature that doesn't exist anymore. Not throwing rubbish in the streets and all of these values that we have lost as society. I go to the city and I see a different situation. When I got to know the city, it was very different for me. And they asked, but what do you think? And what I think is that I must always live like a Nobi. And that's what I was taught since I was a child. So that's why I have preserved my identity. And I have a 9-year-old kid. And when he went to Madeira, he was surprised. I mean, people were surprised because they said, how is it possible that this kid is going to speak of language? But the language shouldn't be taught, it should be fed. So that's the way to learn it. And it was the same situation. I have a nest of languages for kids. I have 15 kids enrolled. The first time I had 8 kids. The next week I had 8 kids. And the third week I had 5 kids. Some weeks I had just 1 kid. And I said, oh my God, how is this possible? What am I going to do? And one of the girls said, hey, but you're not called an Indian at any moment. And they ask it, and you do it with pride. And she said, I want to learn. So at first they didn't want to learn. It was something new that they didn't want to learn. But it was a total immersion first. And they said, no, don't speak to me because I don't understand you. And they cried. They got desperate. And then I said, what do you want? And he said, I want water. Okay, how do you say water? And he said, no, I don't like it. No, just tell me that you want water. And he said, Shutugimaki, give me water. And I said, you see, it's so nice. Those were the first words that I make them say. So we started. And it was not a successful case. In the first meeting, how many kids speak? Actually, a lot of people who arrived from the ministry said, hey, how many kids speak the language? And I said, no, I don't really consider any of them to be speakers. So months went by, and the kids were not so fluent. So that's the double challenge that we had in Madeira. Nor the parents nor the grandparents were speakers. So I had to speak with the parents and to invite them and say, hey, come with me. We're going to have the workshops. It's our roots. It belongs to us. It doesn't belong to anyone else. You're interested to give this to your children. Come with me. And I had to knock the doors at every house to invite the parents. And I started having some parents. During the last 3 months, we have gradually had more parents. And the kids say, hey, teacher, she said that Michelle was singing and counting in Pima. It is a dance of women. And I used to sing this song and dance to this song. And she was saying, Hea, Hea. And she started dancing. And she said, hey, what's your problem? And she started using these words in the language. And she said, no, we don't say Mashiga, we say Hushiga. And the only word they knew was Mashia. And the girl was correcting her mom. She said, no, it's not Mashia, it's Kurniya. And she said, no, that's not the pronunciation, it's a different pronunciation. The small kids started correcting their parents and speaking these words to their parents. And they started doing it. And there I saw this progress. When I had new people, the kids said, yes, we're going to finally listen some Spanish because the teacher is speaking in Chinese. And I said, no, it's not Chinese. And one of the ladies said, hey, but why do you have those little donkeys in your blouse? What are these? Are they donkeys or dogs? Why do you have that? Why do you have those aliens drawn in your blouse? I have seen those drawings before. And I said, those are legends that are not written with letters, but were with drawings. But they didn't know any of these things. It is a double challenge. And it's difficult because we need to educate parents and kids. So it's a double challenge. And it's the experience that I have had in Madera. And now I was discriminated by my own family, by my own Oba family. They said, no, the language is not like she does it. And why is she teaching? She's young. We need an adult to teach young people because adults and older people have wisdom. But she grew and she was fed with her language since she was born. That's what an older man told them. And they said, no, she's not like the people in the mountains in our community. She doesn't speak like us. So I held a conference with the people there. And an older man said, but she speaks more fluently than myself, and I'm a native speaker. And so those were the people of that community. But they wanted to learn, but they thought it would be easy. When they got the chance and they saw it was not easy, they said, no, we don't want that. But I keep insisting all the time. I have walked to very far away communities, and I never imagined I would go there. Where I live is completely different. Even the ecosystem is different if we compare it to my place now. So sometimes I walk, and sometimes I'm walking all day long and identify the speakers. I shout at them. I say, "Hey, take care of my dog," in my language, and they would laugh. And a lady said, "No, the dog wouldn't eat that fat." So that's how I know who a speaker is. That's what I tell them. Hey, take care of my dog because I'm just arriving. So I went to these communities and I have visited 5 communities here at Madeira, and I have counted the people who are speakers there. That's the way to identify the speakers. And during a meeting they held, I said Shoni Tamangara, and only two people could answer. They said Ku, and that's how I identify them. But the other said, hey, what did she say? What had just happened? So that's my experience with the nest of languages that we have at Madeira. We have 12 kids enrolled, but only 8 or 10 go or attend classes. But well, we're working with them, and we invite more kids to learn and to accompany us, and we support them. We say, no, you shouldn't feel less valuable. We're all the same. And I have my son there, and he says, okay, it doesn't matter if you're told names like you're an Indian. You can use, you can know how to produce your own shoes, and the others will have to buy it. He has been also always very optimistic, and he's my main drive and support. Thank you. This was very exciting. But why Madeira? Do you have any reason to do this at Madeira and not in any other community who would have a different kind of mindset? That's because it's an important community. No, muchas gracias a las dos por compartir sus historias del Kohanga. Una de las cosas que resuenan con nosotras
y algunas, es que algunas cosas en las que hemos hablado nosotros también. Entonces, con suerte habremos hecho algún tipo de conexión entre lo que Carisma ha hablado y lo que tú has compartido en este momento y que estás promoviendo por tu cuenta. A veces sí, sí, así se siente como que estás completamente por tu cuenta. A veces quieres incorporar a más gente, pero no sabes cómo se van a desarrollar las cosas. En Nueva Zelanda tenemos mucha gente que trata de impulsar distintas iniciativas, ya sea para los niños o para adultos, y al principio todo el mundo está superpuesto el primer día, en la primera reunión todo el mundo está muy entusiasmado y cuando tienes la siguiente probablemente tienes a la mitad de las personas que tenías en la primera y en la tercera incluso disminuye más. Y así es difícil mantener el momentum, el impulso. Creo que es buena idea también integrar a los papás. Es muy bueno que ellos también brinden apoyo, porque muchas veces los niños no asisten porque los padres son los que tienen poca fe o no confían en que estén tomando la decisión correcta. Entonces creo que lo que estás haciendo es por mucho, mucho más avanzado de lo que nosotros hicimos cuando íbamos comenzando. Y este impulso, esta motivación es muy importante. Así que muchísimas gracias por compartir la historia. Tengo muchas ideas al respecto, Blanca. Pero primero que nada quisiera reconocerte porque son personajes como tú que con personas con un profundo orgullo de ser quienes son, que son las que impulsan a estos cambios y que es lo que te hace lo que eres hoy, lo que es tu hijo. Y si queremos que la lengua sobreviva, este es el tipo de gente que necesitamos en las comunidades. Incluso si no hablan la lengua, necesitamos gente que entienda que es hermosa y que es única y que nadie más tiene esto y que es algo que necesita nutrirse y ser valorado. Si no tienen nada más en su comunidad, sino unas cuantas voces fuertes enviando estos mensajes, entonces se puede crear mucho cambio simplemente con esas voces. Así que realmente quiero reconocerte por eso. Me interesaron un par de cosas que mencionaste. Una de ellas fue, creo que estabas hablando sobre tu hijo Y la gente que decía que los adultos eran los que sabían las cosas y que no deberían estar escuchando al niño. En mi tribu había un hombre, y no quiero insultar a nadie ni ofender a nadie, pero era como muy atrabancado, muy rudo. Y decían, si estás maldito cuando eres joven, entonces en la mayoría de los casos vas a seguir maldito cuando seas grande. Y habló del mito de la sabiduría, de que la sabiduría venía con la edad, porque esto no necesariamente es verdad. No necesariamente es cierto, y necesitamos empezar a escuchar a las voces más jóvenes también, porque es el conocimiento colectivo el que nos da sabiduría. Y quizá, Mariana, para ti esto va a ser interesante en términos, bueno, podrás comentar en términos del apoyo del gobierno. Yo falleció hace tiempo, pero él era un experto en revitalización de la lengua alrededor del mundo. Y él daba un consejo para gente como Blanca, y este era que hicieran un par de cosas claves oportunamente y de manera correcta. Y yo he escuchado todo lo que Blanca intenta hacer en la comunidad, y bueno, comunidades, no solo una, sino varias comunidades, y me pregunto si no te estás extendiendo demasiado y haciendo demasiado, y si necesitarías enfocar tus esfuerzos en tu comunidad en la que estás basada y en los niños. Siempre va a ser un reto que la comunidad acepte a gente de fuera, incluso aunque compartan el lenguaje. Yo no sé si mi tribu habría sido receptiva de otras personas que trataran de revitalizar nuestra lengua por nosotros. Nosotros sentíamos que teníamos que aprenderlo a hacerlo por nosotros mismos. Entonces, Mariana, si estás pensando en cómo hacer esto en otras comunidades, mi consejo sería encuentren a personas en esas comunidades que ya sean parte de la red, porque así va a ser muchísimo más fácil que eliminen las barreras. Hay que eliminar las barreras desde dentro del castillo, no desde fuera, porque normalmente están fortificados, y eso es lo que Blanca ha enfrentado. Pero sí, quiero reconocerte porque estoy muy sorprendida, maravillada por lo que has hecho, y encuentra gente que te siga motivando. Por favor, sigue haciendo lo que haces, y muy bien hecho. Thank you very much. This was really, really enriching and valuable. Okay, so now we are going to listen to the coalition of teachers from Oaxaca, Francisco Sanchez Reyes and Julian Jimenez Ramirez. Could you please share your experience with the room? Do you want to come to the front, or you want to stay back there? However you feel more comfortable. Very well. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Francisco Sanchez Reyes. I am Zapoteco from the Sierra in Oaxaca, and my colleague is Julian, and we also have Felipe de Jesus. They are also from different areas in the mountain range of Oaxaca. As Dr. Farfan mentioned, we come from the Coalition and Promoters of Indigenous Peoples in Oaxaca. This is a civil organization, but at the same time, we are also an office that supervises indigenous education in Oaxaca. So we work in public schools, from preschool to elementary school, and we also work in indigenous communities. We offer assistance in 12 different languages, and for many years we've been working on these. We have taken the Maori experience to adapt it to our own context, because, well, in the end, it's difficult to work with small children based on our own experience and the people available in our office. So somehow we adapted the Maori model to our own particular situation in our schools. Because these children already spoke Spanish, so their indigenous language was going to be a second language. So yes, they had already embraced Spanish, so the experience is a little bit different in this sense. However, we found a way to start this program. So first of all, we reached an agreement with the local authorities so that they would be part of this. They would get involved together with the parents and teachers at schools in these communities. So this is where we started. So initially, we started working with 10 different Cojangareo, with preschool children and elementary school children who were a little bit older. So during this process of obtaining the authorities' agreement, the parents' agreement, we established our goal, our vision, and we saw that there was interest. This experience was based on creating spaces, for instance, houses or, yeah, areas that were adapted to the context with with different tools, kitchen utensils, and things the community used. And based on this, we started attracting the participation of the community. This was not the teachers' work, this was only for support. The real work came from the elders in the community who still spoke the language. So we summoned these linguistic guides, like we call them, and these were the elders. We trained them and we analyzed how we could work in order to interact with the children in these spaces. So that was the premise upon which it was based. We designed our work and we saw good interest among the communities in those locations. Unfortunately, we also faced a lot of barriers, among which, for instance, we know that in preschool, some children should attend preschool during 3 years, but very few children actually complete the 3 years. Some of them only attend school for only 1 year. So I listened to you say that sometimes you need to wait 19 years to see the results. So yes, from preschool to elementary school, there was no continuity. So all the efforts were gone. Probably we had other teachers from other communities, from other school districts, from other systems that was not the indigenous one. So all the efforts faded away after preschool. There was no continuity. And because this was an agreement with the peoples of Oaxaca, the authorities there last for 3 years. So probably the new government was not interested in this. So it depended on the interest of the authority. So yes, we have had to overcome several obstacles. The same with teachers. We are constantly in rotation. So sometimes not all teachers are interested in continuing this program. So first you need to find someone who is interested, and then 2 years after this person is not there anymore, so we lose the sense of continuity. Also, because there was no financial retribution for linguistic guides, it was complicated to keep them there because they were giving their job, their work for free. And this was, well, tough. because sometimes some other people came and they were like, "Oh, how come you are working for free? They are surely being financed, and you are not being paid or retributed." So that's what this kind of ill gossip, and they started believing that there was some kind of support and that we were not giving it to them. But this has never been the case. We've never received financial support from any institution for these types of projects. So all those obstacles have prevented us from advancing in the way we would have liked. Right now, there's one Cojanga Rio, which is El Plan de Carril. It's a preschool center, but they are doing something different to the initial work. This depends on the teachers, and this is more school structured. We don't have the parents or the authorities there. It all comes from the teachers. So, well, we've been trying to analyze how we can raise awareness among the parents, the families, the authorities, because in the end, the authorities and mostly the families should be interested in promoting this progress. So we need to figure out how to enroll people and how to get everyone involved, particularly teachers at all levels, regardless of whether they are indigenous or not. Otherwise, we cannot have continuity. So I don't know, probably there are rules or the regulations which say that because you are part of an indigenous community, our children have the right to be taught in their language. Probably it's written down, but in practice it doesn't happen. Probably we teachers have not promoted this. So probably we're still missing some sort of awareness. And well, so far we have this one language nest trying to survive and putting the best of its efforts, but in the end, preschool ends and that's it. So now I'm going to give the floor to my colleague Julian so that he can share what he's observed and lived. Good morning or good afternoon. My name is Julian Jimenez Ramirez. I speak Mixteco language, and I would like to start by saying what Francisco already mentioned. The Cojanga Rio experience in our pilot in Sempio is a little bit complex, not only because of the teachers, but also because of the communities. Schools have always focused on Spanish, and this is the core of the government policy. So things become complicated when these efforts start coming up, like the Cojanga Rios. Parents start getting concerned about how their children will manage to learn Spanish, how they will learn to write in Spanish, read in Spanish, because that's the demand at school. And this opposes to the will of the adult population who feels sorry for the loss of their language. As our colleague from Chihuahua was saying, adults, those who speak the language, they feel it at their heart, at their core. So they really feel the loss of it, and they are willing to do whatever it's in their hands in order to contribute to revitalize the language in this language nest. And these people become guides, but then we also have the parents of these children who have different interests when they send their children to school. For instance, a preschool is seen as a space where the child already needs to start learning how to read and write. And that's the priority for the current society. And if we add up the government policies and the low level of education we have in indigenous community, then the situation becomes really, really complex. Nonetheless, despite all these difficulties, we've been advancing on the language nests, and I think that their main contribution is that these experiences have become socialized. Each nest carries out meetings at state level. I'm going to say state levels because we have 8 regions around the state, and about 4 regions in the states had nests. So teachers and guides and even parents came together to share ideas on how to work and to show how they were working. So, in some way, they started raising awareness among other parents and other teachers. And I think that this was a huge contribution. I mean, we have just a few language nests working currently, like Francisco said, but this has uh, raised awareness among teachers. We have 444 schools at preschool and elementary school level, and we are working and implementing several activities with them. 2 years ago, we had the pedagogical barricade, as we called it, and we are now developing an exchange of experiences with 4 different school sections in one of our communities in Tlacolula. And these spaces are a good place to see how teachers are starting to work with this linguistic aspect as a core access in the school system. So we think that changing the mindset and the consciousness of people is also a very complex um, effort, and more so in elementary school because parents are demanding their children to learn everything that's in the official textbooks. So how can we break with this and start working with culture, with our local context, with our local culture? So this is quite complex. Another contribution from the language nests is that we've come up with guides for those of for people promoting the indigenous languages. You can find this in the internet. You just have to enter guides for indigenous languages, and you will get these bullet points on how you can work with all this from the language nests. So, also, for instance, the support of teachers becomes complicated as well. As our colleague from Chihuahua was saying, in the case of Mixteco language, well, we have a lot of variants, just as other languages. So sometimes our colleagues speak different variants, and this also has to do with your own will, but also with the way in which we think as a society. And sometimes it is used as a justification not to participate in these kind of activities. Another thing is to make language nests part of the schools. So what we're currently working on with our schools and our teachers is to make language one of the main axes in the educational process. And with all PTO in Oaxaca, this allows us to work on the cultural contents because sometimes this puts the teachers in a difficult position because they're okay. I'm going to teach history, but immediately we get this official version of history. So these are complex decisions, complex situations, and the language nests has shown us that when a teacher says, okay, I'm going to differentiate between the local history and the national, official, or universal history, That's a step forward because these people are starting to realize that there are different ways of seeing this world and different perspectives. And this is part of the experience that we've attained from these Kohanga reels. And I repeat, adults are the elderly are the ones that feel the most the loss of this language. But the parents are not interested, at least not all the time. So this leads to conflict. So we are fighting, we are struggling in this sense. And well, that's what we can share with you today about these language nests. Okay, due to our time limits, we can go to the next presentation, Claudia's presentation, or do you want to give your observations on this presentation? Because I think the translators will leave at 2 o'clock, I believe. And we want to thank them for participation because otherwise this communication would not be possible. Okay, so our colleagues from the museum, we are going to use this device. Muchísimas gracias a los dos por la discusión sobre sus nidos de lengua y las iniciativas que están impulsando. Una de las cosas que observé a partir de esta presentación es que cuando se trata de la participación y el apoyo del gobierno normalmente dura durante los 3 años. Bueno, aquí es 3 años, pero el tiempo que están en su puesto y posteriormente termina. Entonces, cuando estamos tratando de apoyar algo que es una iniciativa de varias generaciones, 3 años nunca va a ser suficiente. Es un poco lo que Carisma decía, de que le pedían que cada 3 meses reportaran cuántos hablantes tenían ya. En Nueva Zelanda tenemos una serie de iniciativas de gobierno que duran también 3 años. Y si tienes una iniciativa, se puede correr un piloto. Entonces tenemos varios pilotos, tantos que podríamos aplicarnos en toda la nación porque tenemos tantos y tantos pilotos. Pero el problema con esto es que en el corto plazo quieren resolver situaciones que tienen que durar durante toda una generación o 2 o 3. Entonces, con frecuencia, el gobierno no ve el valor de esto. Y entonces, no solo se trata del gobierno, sino también de la sociedad, porque esta también muchas veces deja de ver el valor de las lenguas indígenas. Y si no le enseñamos a los niños, en nuestro caso inglés y en su caso español, tienen la idea de que van a sufrir. Para nosotros, sabemos que hay gente que comparte esta creencia, esta verdad, que si los niños no aprenden inglés, van a reprobar la escuela. Y parte de esto, por supuesto, es entendible porque se entiende como un bilingüismo y se entiende que entre más lenguas, más idiomas hables, más listo eres. Porque como niño, tu desarrollo se acelera porque puedes utilizar más partes de tu cerebro. Pero en Nueva Zelanda tenemos hablamos más inglés que los ingleses mismos. Y así tratamos la lengua. Entonces, lo que se busca siempre es promover el inglés sobre el maori. Entonces, como padres y parte de la sociedad desde preescolar, por eso ahí tenemos muchos Kohangareo, de donde yo vengo, empiezan desde los 0 hasta los 5 años. Y a esa edad no les va a afectar mucho, pero a partir de que cumplen 5 y tienen que elegir a qué primaria se van a ir, los padres empiezan a hacer juicios y se preguntan, ¿mi niño va a ser exitoso si lo mantengo en una escuela maori? Y bueno, nos damos cuenta que al final la mayoría cree en los preceptos de la sociedad. Y cuando llegan entonces los muchachos a la prepa, los padres tienen que tomar otra decisión y siempre es una encrucijada de me mantengo con la lengua o permito que mis niños aprendan inglés. Y con frecuencia la conclusión es que van a tener que aprender inglés. Entonces tenemos esta verdad también, esta verdad editada. Y entonces nosotros, como la comisión, buscamos promover el valor de nuestra lengua. Y parte de ello también se basa en influir en los padres, porque los padres son los que toman inicialmente estas decisiones y es bastante difícil. Y si tenemos un gobierno que en 3 años dice, bueno, no funcionó, entonces lo ven como un desperdicio de tiempo. Pero entonces necesitamos creer y tener paciencia y tener pasión sobre todo en lo que hacemos, porque esto es un juego a largo plazo, de carrera larga y de resistencia. Y no se trata de un gobierno, sino de ustedes y la próxima generación.
Francisco y Julio, gracias. Realmente tengo 3 comentarios. El primero es que me encantaría... Bueno, a mí... Yo puedo hablar solamente de la experiencia de Kohangareo porque no puedo hablar de tu comunidad porque no tengo ese conocimiento ni de cómo se ha llevado la gestión, pero quisiera comentar algunas cosas. La primera es lo que se ha hablado acerca del rol de los padres en este aprendizaje y que los padres están asustados para aprender un idioma diferente. Me gustaría citar a las personas que yo considero ser sabias y una de esas personas en mi hogar, una de esas personas mayores, generalmente nos dice esta frase en maori, que significa la fortaleza de mi idioma maori se ha fortalecido por el conocimiento de mi inglés. Probablemente él sea el experto en el idioma maori en el país. Timothy Carito. Y él alienta a los maoríes a incrementar su conciencia y el conocimiento del idioma inglés porque cree que puede contribuir con la profundidad y la calidad del idioma maorí. Es decir, uno va a fortalecer el otro. Me pregunto si podrían hacer cierto tipo de trabajo aquí con respecto a cómo podemos ver o enviar este tipo de mensajes a las comunidades para que se liberen de ese miedo que las capacidades de español de los niños no serán impactadas por el aprendizaje de su propio idioma. Y de hecho van a ser mejoradas, estas capacidades van a ser mejoradas podríamos hacer un trabajo en este sentido. Julio, también quería reconocerte y el hecho de que hayas ofrecido esta información acerca de las guías para los idiomas indígenas y compartir esta información. Y sí, también hay cierto trabajo que hacer aquí. Muchas gracias por el trabajo que Mariana y Blanco están haciendo y a todas las otras personas en este salón. ¿De qué manera podemos crear foros para que puedan intercambiar información e intercambiar experiencias e intercambiar aprendizajes a través de estas experiencias? Y bueno, tenemos también nuestros primos en la tribu del norte que comparte información. De hecho, esto es para el programa que ha sido compartido con nosotros. De hecho, si nosotros no hubiéramos tenido esta red de gente a través del país y alrededor del mundo, que pudieran brindarnos con esta voz y esta guía y este apoyo, en particular cuando los tiempos se vuelven más difíciles, con esta energía y con este compromiso para salvaguardar el idioma para que no esté en declive. Me parece y quisiera saber si hay una oportunidad para ustedes para que puedan crear este tipo de redes, para que puedan compartir el aprendizaje, porque van a experimentar algunos de estos retos y no querrán tener que recrear esta rueda de conocimiento cuando una persona en esta trayectoria ya ha creado este material que puedes retomar y leer. I'm sorry, he's not using the microphone? Or he's Hernando Claudio Hernández Santiago. He's speaking in his native language. My name is Eladio Claudio Hernández Santiago, and I'm very thankful for being here. I'm very thankful with the organizers of this event. So it is an honor being with the authors of the Kohanga Rio sharing these experiences. So I'm here to be a witness of all of this work that has been generated. It is a legacy that is functional. So, out of this material that they did, we have a book which is called The Languages Nest for the the Kahanga Rio for the New Zealand case, and that's how we're going to find it. As antecedents, I can tell you that in the 80s, different young people in the San Esteban Atlatauca migrated to Tijuana City because they thought they would have better life opportunities. Among these young people, one young man called Eladio Claudio Santiago was there. He didn't know that he would find a very racist society. Faced to this very difficult context, he just kept going on. At the end of the 80s, different families of the El Checatongo villages and Santa Caterina and San Esteban Aclatauca composed a new colony at the western part of Tijuana City. At the beginning of the 90s, on September the 1st of 1993, I stayed in this community because of work matters, because I was assigned a job position there. There I had my family. I had three daughters and one boy, and I might tell you that none of them learned Mixteco language. I tried to teach this language to my children, but I didn't find any echo. It was like a useless effort because the context absorbed us. It's the same situation for the school background, because even if the parents were opposed to it, because they preferred their children to learn English, and that was a constant claim from them. Now, with the this creation of the Cojanga Rio in Tijuana, it was when I studied my master degree. We had to present a research proposal. I first thought to speak about language teaching in the school context. Once I had that idea, I started founding my research proposal. For that, I had to check the viability for this proposal. That's why a specialist for research proposals was in charge of, well, verifying every proposal. My proposal, which was presented, was not viable because my work was beyond, because the trend for these minority languages was to disappear. I was not convinced by that point of view from the specialist, so that's why I looked for support of Norma Carvajal, and she got in touch with me with the Inali people, and I thank them. They are present today. When I presented my idea, they said they would review my case. I thought my case and my proposal were lost, but surprisingly, on August 2011, I was called to receive guidance regarding my proposal. I realized then that my proposal was within the community, because not only my kids but also the kids of those who had migrated were there, and they didn't learn their parents' language. That was a fact. And having read the languages book for the New Zealand case, well, I was inspired. This helped me to focus my research project and direct it towards the community. The implementation of the Kohanga Rio, the first case in Tijuana. When this project was completed and with Inali's support, the families were organized to work together. We had some divided ideas. However, those of us who agreed with that idea stayed working. We started planning how to teach language to young kids. Many of us, and especially those of us who are better prepared, we started coming out with different ideas, and we discovered how we were alienated from our culture and how we are reproducing an imposed culture, because according to us we had to plan to be able to teach kids. We listened to some proposals and suggestions about teaching. The first week we would teach the names of the animals and the plants, then the food, etc. Then I just took a book, the book of the Kohangarrio, and I read. In the book, it is clearly pointed out that to implement the Kohangarrio, you need to work in a natural context. That's how I explained that our parents didn't plan how to teach the language to us. They didn't say, hey, tomorrow we will speak about a certain topic to our kids. No, they just spoke, they interacted, and we listened to them and we learned naturally. One light of hope with the kids of the Rio. That's how we started practicing our language a little bit more in any context. We gathered some songs in Mixteco for this variation. There was a grandmother who was speaking the language constantly. The others reinforced it. We incorporated the celebrations and rituals of our people. We had the ritual of speaking to Mother Nature, and the grandmother with the mom in charge of the Cojanga Rio, uh, walked the kids to the streets, and they went to the park, and they learned the names of the animals and the plants that they looked there. They had some videos that they saw, and some of us narrated stories. I can tell you that these kind of videos came out through the work done by Dr. Flores Farfan, where he said that the communities have to produce their own stories with the mystical animals, because every people have their own mystical animals. But for us, well, this sounds very interesting, but it was very complicated because economic resources and material resources are required. So I observed that one of my brothers was watching this kind of mimic videos, and he was laughing all the time. And I was interested, and I said, "Why is he laughing?" And I said, "Yes, it's interesting." So there we have all of the materials. So now we just need to adapt them. That's what we did. We gathered these kind of mimic videos, and then we used our language to tell stories. That's our work. Time went over, and it seemed that nothing happened. And just as being part of this project, I felt frustrated. At the fourth month, the kids were starting to speak, but I didn't want to have like to be deceived. So it was until the 6th month that the first expressions were clear. They started using the word "sta" to ask for a tortilla, "tata," "mama," among other words to describe other close objects. The persistence so that kids could speak. We kept on with our works, and as months went by with this rainy day, one of the kids said, "Tata kumsabo," it means, "Grandpa, it's raining." He also said, "Nata nitanteteju," "Grandpa, the chair is broken." That afternoon was an afternoon of joy because I understood that the kids of the Kohanga Rio were learning. They were more interested in learning, but they had different difficulties, and they just ended up speaking in Spanish, but with a constantinali accompaniment. It was determined that kids in the nest should have this need to speak the language. When kids needed something, but they spoke in Spanish, we ignored their needs. We also used the sentence "Tujeko niniri," I don't understand you. In this way, the learning process was accelerated. Sharing this experience with the school community. As I said it before, I work in a primary school. Since I work in an indigenous school in the same community, and the permanent struggle has been to teach the language in these spaces. As I said before, the parents had this resistance, and even our colleagues in the working center. But with the experience and the obtained results of this nest, we had a speech with the colleagues to try to foster the language teaching. With these results, the colleagues were more convinced. That's how our work center has had more acceptance within the community. Teachers want to teach daily life sentences. Now we have a new director who's fostering more this language teaching, and we are producing the first books that will be in the school library. So this is what we're doing with the kids. So to conclude with, so I think that we need to trust a little bit more in our project and not listening to what the ones that don't agree with us say. I also consider that the community works are more transcendental. Trusting the Kohanga project is important for us. It's important to use the manual for the guidance because when I felt that we were losing our direction, I would read this book once again and sharing these generated experiences because we can all learn from everyone. So that's my experience with the nest of languages generated within the Tijuana community. And I'm very thankful for being with us. It's a pleasure to share. So, as you might know and feel, Claudio is an example of commitment and perseverance in his community in this very adverse context of migration for the indigenous languages. His work is admirable in these very difficult and adverse conditions that they have developed. Thank you very much. So, there we have the kids back there. So, we had the privilege to be there. It's very interesting. So this is the Kohanga Real book. We have a digital version. Some colleagues who were talking to me, they were interested. You have the digital version. You can ask for it. It's the digital version. So this is the story of an owl. In that way, we start speaking to kids and they start learning naturally. It's a different way to help them. Gracias. Los bebés en el video, aunque no podíamos escucharlos, podemos ver que estaban participando, que estaban escuchando, y ese es el tipo de ambiente en lo que los niños quieren estar aprendiendo. Ahora simplemente quisiera reconocer todos los esfuerzos que se realizan ahí y alentarlos a continuar. Claudio ya les mostró algunas de las estrategias que su comunidad están haciendo para crear recursos del idioma, por tratar de no recrear la rueda. Tenemos que encontrar una manera de compartir estos recursos para que puedan adaptarlos a sus propios idiomas y sus propias comunidades. En términos, y ya hemos mencionado varias ocasiones en las que hemos tenido clases que se han establecido y hemos comenzado con 15 personas, y la siguiente semana tenemos 8 personas y después tenemos 4. Es algo en lo que podemos reflexionar. Si ustedes tienen el rol de Blanca, de Blanco, de Claudio, y son responsables de estar alentando el idioma para sus comunidades, van a tener que utilizar mucha energía porque le están dando esto a las otras personas. Y a veces simplemente podemos sentirnos un poco desmotivados cuando el número de estudiantes va disminuyendo, pero quisiera recordarles algo que me decían las personas mayores, esta frase que significa: el destino hace que estemos más hambrientos, y esto, en el contexto del idioma, esto le da a los que lo valoran, van a regresar. No se preocupen mucho acerca de los demás que no regresan a clase, porque una vez que comiencen a sentir esta hambre por su propio idioma, van a regresar, pero pueden usar esta energía, estarían desperdiciando esta energía si se preocupan por la gente que ya no va a clase o si tratan de convencerlos de venir a clase. Usen su energía para alimentar a aquellos que sí quieren estar en clase. Solamente para repetir el reconocimiento que ya realizó Carisma, fue encantador el poder ver y escuchar los esfuerzos que están realizando. Me parece que han sido muy consistentes en términos de nuestra respuesta, en términos de querer alentar y darles soporte. Uno de los elementos que puedo llevarme de la presentación de Claudio fue el libreto que han presentado y que me recordó de qué manera comenzó el Kohanga, porque no teníamos recursos, no teníamos libros, no teníamos videos, no teníamos nada. Y recuerdo a mis tías que estaban en el Kohanga. Ellos usaban masking tape para cubrir las palabras en paqueja o en inglés, y de esta manera los cubrían con masking tape y después ponían las palabras en el idioma maori. Y entonces podías ver todos estos libros con masking tape con sus propias palabras, y se tiene que empezar en algún punto. Y los recursos, porque el gobierno no nos quería dar estos recursos, y a veces esto nos restringe de lo que queremos hacer. Entre nuestra gente tenemos la capacidad de ser muy creativos. Y bueno, este video, aunque yo no entendía lo que estaba sucediendo, las imágenes son suficientes y si estás participando, puedes comenzar a divertirte con el idioma. Esto es lo que quisiera llevarme. Me parece que una de las cosas que también quisiera repetir es que muchos de los mitos asociados con la revitalización del idioma y que la gente comenzaba a hacer excusas sobre el idioma y por qué no está sucediendo. Y hablamos mucho el día de hoy. Quisiera hablar de uno de los aspectos muy importantes, es que los idiomas los atrapas, no te los enseñan. Y esto realmente nos puede recordar que el hablar a los niños de una manera normal, en vez de tratar de enseñarles y hacer que escuchen, esto puede ser mucho más fácil para ellos. En el video con estos niños tan jóvenes con el palito, siendo el maestro del adulto, es parte de todo este juego y nuestro idioma, nuestro proceso de aprendizaje o nuestra palabra para decir aprender es la misma que enseñar, es ako, que significa aprender y enseñar al mismo tiempo, depende del contexto. Pero la idea de aprender también se trata de ser el maestro y como ya lo dijo Carisma, los niños son listos, son como esponjas, simplemente van a absorber la información. Podemos aprender tanto de ellos como podemos enseñarles. Así que tener esta relación de criar a los niños. Lo peor que podrías hacer es tratar de enseñarles todo el día, porque ellos estarían perdiendo este aprendizaje natural y también no aprenderías todo lo que puedes aprender de ellos. Por ejemplo, yo aprendo muchas cosas de mi hija de 3 años y parte de esto es el estar abiertos para querer desarrollar el idioma. Otro elemento es que no tenemos que reflexionar demasiado sobre la gramática. Algo que hemos descubierto es que las personas se obsesionan con la gramática hasta el punto en que realmente las personas ya ni quieren hablar porque se asustan y piensan que los van a corregir. Cuando hablamos inglés, por ejemplo, probablemente es la peor gramática, pero hablamos en inglés todo el tiempo y ni siquiera pensamos en la gramática que estamos usando porque es una interacción. No se trata de concentrarse tanto en la gramática, sino en el idioma maori. Si nos obsesionamos con la gramática hasta el punto en que la gente ya se quiere ir. No reflexionen demasiado sobre la gramática. Si las personas quieren hablar, ayúdenlos a hablar en una manera natural, porque a veces no es lo mismo que cuando lo estás escribiendo. Cuando hablamos es algo más coloquial. Generalmente decimos cosas que ni siquiera escribiríamos. Así que traten de ayudar a las personas en vez de asustarlos.
La otra parte es que la consistencia es muy importante, el ser consistente. La mayoría de las personas van a decir que no van a aprender a hablar el otro idioma, en su caso español, pero esto es un mito. Hay cosas que no se pueden evitar. En nuestro caso no se puede evitar el inglés, está en todos lados. Es tan dominante en nuestro país que no importa lo que trates de hacer para bloquearlo. Los niños van a estar en contacto con él de una manera u otra. Entonces, en vez de tratar de encerrarlos en una burbuja y separarlos, hay que crear un ambiente propicio y en el que seamos consistentes. Mi niña, cuando estaba viviendo con sus abuelos, solía llamar a mi mamá cuando hablaba maori. Entonces mi mamá le hacía preguntas y le decía, ¿por qué estás hablando en maori conmigo? Mi hija podía entender perfecto lo que mi mamá le decía. No era tema de cuál era la pregunta, pero quería saber por qué estaba tratando de demostrar frente a otras personas que hablaba maori. Pero debido a que no es algo consistente, ella más bien no quería que la escucharan. Si el gobierno trata de evitar que eviten su lengua o tienen no pueden detenerlos, no pueden decir, no pueden utilizar su lengua. Utilizar su lengua es muy, muy importante. el simplemente poder hablar. Simplemente al abrir la boca nuestra lengua sale, no necesitamos al gobierno para eso, simplemente necesitamos nuestro corazón y la determinación para hacerlo. Pero lo principal, como hemos visto antes, gira en torno en mantenerlo relevante en nuestra situación, en nuestro contexto. ¿Y qué era la otra cosa? Ser consistente. Ser relevante, ser consistente, que la lengua sea utilizable, pero más que nada divertirse, poderse divertir con la lengua es clave. Si no se están divirtiendo, entonces la gente, pues bueno, como que se desconecta. Entonces, muchísimas gracias por compartir sus historias y darnos la oportunidad de reflexionar en nuestro propio viaje, en nuestra propia trayectoria y qué más necesitamos seguir haciendo en relación también con lo que ustedes están haciendo. Muchas gracias. Okay, let's all say kia ora. Thank you very, very much. This has been very enriching. This will allow us to continue growing and becoming better and better in our own communities. We can take all the learnings from today to become stronger and continue building a stronger future for our language and our communities. So thank you very, very much for your presence, for being here, for your time, and we will be in touch. This is just the beginning of a journey built together. Thank you very much. Well, first of all, I would like to thank you for your participation here. We didn't expect to see so many people here, so it's amazing to have people from different backgrounds, contexts, languages. It's amazing. I have just given away a survey, a questionnaire. I missed a few copies, so probably you could share some of the questionnaires, or you could share them with the people who didn't get one. And as I mentioned earlier, if you wish to keep in touch with us, it would be a good idea to write down your contact information so that we can have a contact list for future events. And I want to thank our two friends who came from very far away from New Zealand. They arrived yesterday at 7 a.m. and we spent the whole day in workshops and meetings. And today they are very energetic still. So I am very, very impressed that have not fallen asleep. Thank you very, very much, Kiara. It's a great honor to have you here, and I look forward to continue collaborating with the Maori Language Commission and with all of our colleagues. And I also want to thank Dr. Jose Antonio Farfan. We've been exchanging thoughts and we wanted to do this for a long time, so it's been amazing to have actually seated this event. So I'm sure we will continue working with our friends in Gala and with Jose Antonio, and thank you very much to the museum and Julio Alfonso for organizing all this. Y finalmente, thank you very, very much to our colleagues from Baja California, Chihuahua, and Oaxaca who came from very far away as well. For me, it was very touching to listen to your experiences. Really, really, it's been amazing. Thank you very much for sharing.